I'm Bob Sheritz, and happy holidays to everyone and a happy Monday. This is The Way Out. We are an intensive outpatient program for substance use disorders, adolescents, adults, family members. Our location is Plum Canyon and Bouquet Canyon, and our phone number is 296-4444. Visit our awesome website at thewayoutrrecoveryscv.com. And again, happy holidays and welcome to the show and a happy Monday. Here we go again. I want to remind everybody, Monday for some people can be kind of daunting. We sit and we look at this big week in front of us, and Mondays can be like, oh my God, But I like to remind everyone this, at the beginning of the week to take time to sit back, relax, get grateful, look around at all the beautiful things in your life, and let's take this Monday as an opportunity to look at this big, beautiful week sitting in front of us with all the opportunities to be of service to others in our community and those around us. Here we are in the final stretches of the holiday season. I know some people are like, probably, thank goodness, right? And some are like, no, we just love the holidays. I love the festivity of the holidays. I love all the lights. I like the Christmas music. I like everything that's going on about it. It's just a beautiful festive time of year. I love the weather outside, nice and chilly. I'm a hiker, so it's nice to get out in that nice chilly air. But with the holidays, and especially, I get to the end of the year, and every year we seem to do this. We talk about, because, some of the issues that we deal with in the world of drug and alcohol treatment are not pretty. And a lot of people lose their lives, and there's a lot of stuff around it. And so the holiday season, we like to honor family members that are sitting, missing their loved ones, whether they have died from drug use or they're out there and just not present at the dinner tables during this wonderful season. And so by the end of this holiday season, I'm kind of like, because we've been talking a lot about loss and a lot about grief and a lot about the destruction of, the disease of addiction and other things. So we're going to spend some time this is the final show of the year. On air with us today is Sharon Brubaker, who is a grief specialist. Hi, Sharon.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say my favorite part of the holiday is getting together with family.
Yeah.
And the Christmas music, for sure. Those are the two parts that I definitely enjoy.
Yeah, and we, and I just said, we get to the end of the year and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, but it's like that for a lot of families at this time of year.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so the more tools that we can give people that are out there that may be grieving, that may be experiencing a loss or have experienced a loss, or those that are suffering from various disorders, mental health, substance abuse, whatever's going on, we want to let you know that although the holiday season can bring sort of that loss in stark contrast to all the stuff that's going on around us, that there are some tools and some people that you can connect with and support groups and clinicians and programs so that you can not only make it through the holidays if you've experienced grief or loss, but also you can find ways to honor the loss that you're having during this holiday season. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. I think what happens in society, they tell us that this is the happiest time of the year.
Right.
And we're all supposed to be so happy. But what happens is we embark on December 1st and we are suffering. Our heart is broken. And the definition of grief is that grief is normal and natural. It's a normal and natural reaction to a loss of any kind, right?
So all of us are going to experience some measure of grief throughout our lives, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, but then if it's normal and natural, why doesn't it feel normal and natural? And why do we not know how to do it? And why do we not understand it? And why do we not know how to go through it? And it's very simple, is that we were never taught. We were never taught how to grieve properly. And so we use the tools out there, which most of the tools out there are misinformation, to help us push through or fight through these pains and feelings that we're experiencing.
So when we say the words like grief and loss, it's not always surrounding death of a loved one or something like that, right? There are many sort of reasons why we might be grieving. What are some of those reasons?
So we know for a fact, as grief recovery specialists, there are 43 known losses that a person can experience over a lifetime.
Can you remember all 43?
I can't remember all 43, but I'll go as many as I can. We know death and divorce are the most popular, right?
Common, the most
death,
common, sure.
Divorce, right? Breakup of a romantic relationship. What about pet loss, right? Financial changes, increase or decrease. Someone winning the lottery actually absolutely does experience a loss of their old life. Losing a job.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wait. So it doesn't always have to be so-called bad news that will trigger some sort of grief. Now that you mention it, it's interesting because over the years, I've been providing drug and alcohol treatment in Santa Clarita for about 12 years.
Right.
And over the years, I've had many people who are professionals, like police officers, firefighters, things like that, who will retire. And they're like, yippee, retirement. Yes. Woo, like I won the lottery, right? And then all of a sudden, they find that their drinking is out of control or that they're just like sad or they're suffering from depression. And I think it's very similar to that.
Retirement is absolutely on the list. What about moving? Think about a child who has their very best friend, in Newhall, and mom moves them to Valencia, and now we have to move schools. That's an absolute loss.
Yeah, it's not just the loss of the house or the neighborhood you live in, but think about it, the school, the friends, all the familiarity inside of that particular neighborhood or school.
And think about the child that has multiple moves throughout their lifetime. That is absolutely a loss that we carry on with us. What about a pet loss?
It's interesting because I heard you say that, and out of all the things in my life that I've been through, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I remember, but I constantly hold on to that memory of my pet cat when I was very small, how much I loved and how hard that was at 7 years old.
Oh, yeah.
To lose that pet. Yeah.
And go back to that 7-year-old self, and I don't know how mom and dad were, but I know a lot of common what we get out in society. Well, it's just a cat. Get over it. People are like, come on, move on. We'll get you a new cat. So replacing the loss, which is so hurtful to a child.
We find in drug and alcohol treatment, we find a lot of times that people have never even taken a look at that grief because they've been in their substance abuse for so very long, or like in our case, there was so much other stuff going on in our family at that time. My dad had left the year before, and my mom was just trying to manage 2 boys, working night shifts, trying to keep it all going. That like the loss of a pet was almost like we got to move on. Small. That's nothing compared to what we got going on. And then we weren't sitting down, having family dinners to talk about how we're feeling and all this stuff that's going on. So there's many factors that come into.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you and I were talking earlier. Do you want me to keep going with the
list?
Okay,
yeah,
I'll keep going with the list.
He's just adjusting.
He's over there trying to get my attention. Thank you, sir. So I said moving a house, a pet loss, miscarriage, right? A death of a child, imprisonment of a loved one, right? Moving a school. Ending an addiction is absolutely a grief and a loss.
Some of the most I like well-written literature. I like to read old books. I'm like old school. I like the books. I don't like the thing that you flip through.
The Kindle.
And whatever. Yeah, right. And so I'm old school, and I love literature that's written back when it was, in my opinion, much more well-written. That didn't sound right, but... But some of the best literature I've ever seen is we have our recovering people write letters to their, like, goodbye letters and things like that, to their drugs and to the rituals, and that is some of the best literature I've ever seen written.
Wow! When you actually go there,
it's like Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. I mean, really.
Absolutely.
It really is,
Absolutely. And it's part of our process that we talk about when we talk about completing the relationship.
Okay.
So when those losses in our life accumulate, they accumulate. We know that loss is cumulative, and it's cumulatively negative. So it will build upon itself, right? The negatives will continue to build, and they stay there in your heart.
So if I, at 7 years old, just kind of shove to the side the feeling that I'm having over the loss of that cat, and then I experience other losses in my life, all of that stuff just continues to build up as I push it to the side.
As
right?
you can continue to push it to the side, and it comes out at the most inopportune moments, and it's really strange. Something small will happen to you, and you will literally go off the deep end, and sometimes we don't even understand, and we can't pinpoint it back to this is all about the cat, and then moving the house, and then dad leaving and getting the divorce, and me thinking it was my fault, and all of those things that build upon themselves. So what we do is we carefully go through the losses that each person will experience. They do their own work. They review each one of those losses, and then we discuss between us which ones need to be completed, and we go after those and we work on those.
Got it. Which ones I haven't processed.
Yes.
I think I've heard a lot of myths around grieving, around loss, and it's like, just hang in there.
Yeah.
Time will heal it. But I think that the truth is that moving the process is what really there's healing in that, right?
Right. And you and I talked about time. One of the big myths, the number one myth, is that time will heal. You hear all the time people say, just give it time. Just give it time. I was at a woman's house whose husband had just passed away, and her boss walked in and he said, the most important thing you can do right now is go back to work,
right,
which is keep busy, which is a myth. You got to keep busy, and just give it time. You'll feel better in time. Those two are the two worst pieces of advice we can give someone, right? And you and I both know we've met people that 10, 20, 30 years, they're still grieving over that loss, right? It is not time that heals. We know for a fact it is the action steps that we take within time that actually heal our heart. It's the action steps that we go to looking at what is so painful that actually heals our heart and working through that pain.
Well, and I, as you're saying that, the word bravery comes to mind. We thank you for coming and attending our event that we did. We dedicated a wall at the way out and allowed families to come and just open what I like to call it our sacred space. That's our space where it's totally safe and you can come in and just cry or scream or yell or whatever the heck you need to do. And we opened up that space, and there were about, 70 or 100 people there. There was a lot of people.
It was packed.
And a lot of them were family members that were there to honor their loved ones who had lost their lives to addiction, and put a picture up on that permanent wall that we have. And through that whole ceremony, I just kept thinking how very brave these people are.
Yeah. And the other thing that happens a lot is that a lot of times people don't get a chance to tell their story.
Right.
No one will ever ask them. We did a survey at the Grief Recovery Institute a few years back, and 98% of the people that we surveyed, and when we asked the question, what is the best thing that you can do for a griever? And the answer was not talk to them about it.
Right.
When my nephew died,
don't bring it up?
Don't bring it up, because I don't want to make them cry.
Yeah.
I don't want to get them upset, and I don't want to make them cry. When my nephew Austin died in 2006, it was almost 8 months before anyone asked me about how I was doing.
Right.
And the first time they did, I literally fell apart, because all of the questions were, how is Erica? That's my sister.
Yeah.
How are the kids doing? His brothers, how are they doing? People ask me questions about family members, but no one ever asked me about being the aunt that had lost a nephew. And so I just kept pushing it down. I didn't know. I literally didn't know. That's kind of what I felt in that room that night. Was so beautiful. These moms standing up and telling the story, and telling the story of who their kids were, It was so emotional. My kid was funny. He told jokes. He would have been your best friend had you met him. It was just so amazing.
Well, and I think there were a lot of things that we accomplished on that evening, but I think the biggest thing that we wanted to accomplish was people to be able to hear that just because the things that happen in drug addiction may oftentimes look ugly,
Right.
that the people that it affects
Yes.
don't lose their beauty because of that they are these beautiful, wonderful people. And we wanted to give the opportunity for families to come up there and say exactly what you just said. This is my wonderful son right here who was taken too quickly from me because of this horrible disease. But don't lose the memory of the beautiful person that he is.
And this is my child, my precious child. And yes, absolutely. And that came across so clearly. And that's where, each one was just affecting me. And I just saw these moms and the family members. And think about the family members, Bob, that are suffering the losses that they suffer, just the kids having to go through that. The brothers and sisters having to live in the shadow of, my brother's got an addiction, mom and dad are spending all their time on this, and that's a loss. That's an absolute loss.
I've worked with several families where I've seen this dynamic where one of the children has a drug addiction going on, and over the years, the other child or children will sort of purposely act out to say, hey, I'm over here, right? Oh, you think they're bad? I watched a brother and a sister over the years, and I think they still, I haven't been in touch with them in a couple of years, but I watched them where one of them would start to get sicker with mental health issues, and they both would just go off the rails, sort of competing for everybody's attention, right? And mom and dad just back and forth, and it was just
and just let's think about this kid right here who's absolutely. Let's consider the thought that possibly he's grieving,
right?
Okay, and what would he be grieving? Let's just talk about it: the loss of his family, the loss of his brother or sister, the loss of his parents' attention.
Yeah, the personal attention.
Feeling guilty that it might be his fault, that maybe he's done something wrong. And having all of these feelings and having nowhere to take them or talk about them and discuss them.
Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful.
Well, and you reminded me when, as you were talking about your nephew, the loss of your nephew, and how everybody went directly to his mom and said, "How are you doing?" But didn't even, as you were saying that, I thought, man, how many times have I done that? Where I will say sorry to an immediate family member, and I'm not even thinking about the other family members that are around. Don't even consider it, right? And the rest of the family.
I was sharing this the other day, and I had never said the word grieve or grief. I literally thought in my naive state that only Erica and Lewis would grieve the loss of their son. And what you just said, I did to my very own daughter, Brittany, who was 17 years old, who was actually there when Austin died. I expected her to be strong and tighten up, and you'll be fine. I have to deal with my sister. She's grieving. So I know that it happens. I did it to my own children. So absolutely.
Well, and probably not taking care of yourself and honoring your own grief in that, because I have to be strong for my sister.
Absolutely.
Right. And I gotta step up here and not for a minute thinking about wow, I'm grieving too.
Yes.
And it's almost like, so you see this happen a lot of times around the holidays over the years is you would think during the holidays that there's more people that are looking for treatment and all this stuff, but there's an interesting dynamic that sort of happens is people hold it together. We're going to make it through these holidays and we're good. And I show up for the families. And then January 1st comes. Okay. And right around the middle of January, people start to fall apart.
Okay.
Because I don't have to hold it together anymore.
Yes, exactly.
The family's going, everybody's going back to where they're going. And I just go, and I collapse, right?
Exactly.
And so there's got to come a time for you, like you're paying all the attention to your sister.
Yes.
Everything's good. I'm going to be strong for her, and there's got to come a time for you when it breaks.
And for me, it was 8 months. I knew the date, the time, and everything. And it was in my first grief recovery class where it just hit me, and it was like she asked me, why I came to the class, and I
Right.
literally just fell apart. I couldn't keep it together any longer.
If you had not gone to that grief recovery class, do you think it would have? I mean, it's hard to sort of imagine how it would have come out. Like that energy's got to go somewhere, right?
I can guess, though.
Yeah.
I probably would be wearing a crown because Austin died in 2006 and his brother died in 2015.
Right.
I could imagine that right now I would be wearing a crown as I'm the aunt who has lost 2 nephews, and I would be going around telling my story and wearing it almost like a badge of honor. And it would also excuse me for doing bad behavior.
Right.
So in my own life, probably over drinking,
Okay.
right? Not showing up where I need to be, being depressed. I would probably also be a person that just talked about it nonstop as if I just got stuck in time.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine where my heart would be right now and how it formulates the path for the future of you. I really don't know.
Yeah, and and this is not to, I'm going to say this and it's not cruddy in any way, but like lose it every once in a while and be able to do this. Well, don't you know?
Yeah.
I deserve to be able to tie one on every once in a while.
Yes.
And don't you know what I'm going through? And
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I'm going to use the word like selfish,
Yeah.
but I don't mean that in a mean way, right?
Right.
Like that's what we do with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is to be able to use it as, and it almost sounds horrible to say as an excuse.
Yes.
But because somebody who doesn't understand that might be thinking, well, screw you, Bob. Yeah. I'm going to use it as an excuse. Man, I went through the pain. Who are you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I can see that happening, right? Like, I spent a lot of my life going, well, if you grew up in that house, you would do what I did.
You would do what I do,
or
right,
whatever,
right.
So it's easy to do that. I think the hard part is being able to do the work and see it.
Absolutely. And okay,
or see that you're doing it. You know what I mean?
See that you're doing
Yeah.
it and know that you're doing it. So in June, I lost my very best friend of 15 years. Her name is Sharon, and we spoke on the phone every single day.
Sharon and Sharon.
Sharon and Sharon. She called us Sharon Squared. I always thought it was goofy, but she always
Whatever.
called us Sharon Squared. And we talked on the phone every single day, and she was definitely the one beneath my wings. And in February, she started complaining of headaches. On April 8th, she was diagnosed with glioblastoma and given 2 months to live.
Wow.
And she died on June 28th. And she was the choir director at our church choir. And yesterday was the very first church choir, Christmas choir that we had for the children. And she directed the children's program.
Right.
And so so last Sunday I'm sitting there
was an
thinking.
empty spot
It was an
yesterday.
empty spot for me, but I thought, okay, what's going to be my plan? So I planned to volunteer and help because I felt that's what she would want me to do.
Okay.
And I went there and I helped. And the minute I stood on stage, I was sort of like a stagehand, and the music started playing. I missed her instantly, and I started crying.
Yeah.
And I absolutely missed her. We did a beautiful performance. It was beautiful. I walked off the stage, and I just walked to my husband. I said, I need to have some time. And I just left, and I spent that time with her. But I had a plan, and I went into it with a plan. So it looked a whole lot different than it would have looked, I think, had I not grieved her and not walked the steps of recovery.
Well, and the plan you had is as a result of you doing the work over the years.
Yes.
Because starting with the loss of Austin way back,
Yes.
right, in
Yeah.
06.
Yeah.
And so with all these years, you got 10 plus years
Yeah.
of practicing what healthy grief healing looks
Yeah.
like, and then you get to put it in practice right here, which is... imagine, and you probably don't have to imagine, you work with people all the time, but imagine somebody who has no idea
Yeah.
about all that and just comes rushing into
Yeah.
the regular holiday season, and all of a sudden we show up at the choir, and I realize in that moment, oh, wait a minute.
I can't
Boom.
do that. It's a first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time there's a first. So we definitely can get more into that. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, we will. And real quick before we take a break, because I want to put this out there a couple of times. If somebody wants to get involved in grief recovery work, is there a website they can contact you at, or a phone number, or both?
I'm SharonBrubaker.com. That's SharonBrubaker. And my phone number is 661-212-0720.
All right, folks, we'll be right back. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour, and I'm Bob Sheritz. We'll be back in a minute.
Come join me, Arif Halby, for Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Every Tuesday at noon, we uncover ways to help you manage your money, get out of debt, and prepare for your retirement. That's every Tuesday at noon on Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Are you not sure if you can retire yet? Listen to us and learn about tips for savings, retirement strategies, and so much more. That's every Tuesday at noon on Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour on your hometown station, KHTS.
The VIP Grotto experience at the Ivy Day Spa. Your experience begins with a clay facial mask. Then you are painted with a soothing aloe vera shea butter coconut oil body mask. In temperatured chambers, you relax and allow the moisturizing masks to work their magic. Finally, you rinse off in a rainforest shower and finish with a pH balancing mist. Treat yourself to this hydrating and refreshing experience at the Ivy Day Spa. Call to reserve your VIP Grotto experience at 260-1244.
Little Eye Leaders is the newest preschool in the Santa Clarita Valley. At Little Eye Leaders, our outstanding teachers lead with intellect, perspective, and heart. That means our programs provide a warm, nurturing atmosphere to meet the unique needs of each child. We believe that play is a powerful form of learning for young children. That's why our kids have every opportunity to learn through the magic and excitement of play. Parents, schedule a tour today by calling 303-0400 or online at littleeyeleaders.org.
Hometown, your hometown station.
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sheritz, and this is the Way Out Recovery. We are in studio today with grief specialist Sharon Brubaker. I want to, anybody who's just joining us, take a moment to really sit back and reflect upon this holiday season. If you're experiencing some grief or a loss in your life, and the holidays are bringing up stuff for you, what we are offering you today is we want to give you some tools. We just want to talk openly about what grief looks like, sounds like, smells like, and what it is in your life, right? And so that you can be okay, not only make it through the holidays, but be okay and enjoy the holidays as well, even though that person or that thing that you wish was around may not be there. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Sharon, you've been involved in the Grief Recovery Institute.
Yes.
For how many years? Since the loss of your nephew?
Since the loss of Austin in 2006. In 2006, I was sitting at a real estate open house, and my phone rang, and it was my then 17-year-old daughter, Brittany, and she screamed into the phone that she had lost Austin. It was Father's Day weekend.
Felt like I physically can't find him?
Like I can't find him.
Right.
And Austin was this curious little boy that would talk to anybody, and he loved big trucks. And so I immediately said to her, he's gone off with somebody. He's followed someone with a big truck. And she said to me, no, Mom. They were in Lake Havasu for Father's Day weekend.
How old was
he? Was 10.
He was 10, okay.
And she said, Mom, we found his shoes. And I didn't get that when she said it, but going back to it now, the ground was about 110 degrees, so he couldn't have walked off without his shoes on.
Right.
And she was trying to tell me, without actually saying the words, she was trying to tell me that she thought he had drowned.
Right.
And the next words out of her mouth was, I'm so scared. And I immediately went to, be strong, Sharon, just be strong. So I tried to keep my voice really strong. Yeah,
right.
I went into mom mode. My knees buckled, and I immediately went to the ground, but I was trying to keep my voice strong. And about 3 hours later, we actually got word that he had actually drowned right there from carbon monoxide poisoning, right under the boat, right, literally where they were standing.
So he's inhaling the fumes?
It comes in through the fumes.
Yeah.
They know they have a problem there, kind of by the bridge, the London Bridge. So inhaling the fumes, plus it seeps in through your skin through the water. And for small children, it's more dangerous than for us adults. It goes to them really fast. Yeah. So We started a process. I started a process to help my sister grieve, right? And so immediately I thought grief support. So I started looking up grief support groups, and I started sending her to these groups.
I need to be the strong sister.
I need to be strong.
Who's gonna make all this happen?
Make
sure
all this
they're
happen.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
make sure she's okay. About the third group, she called me up and said, "Please don't help me anymore." She said, "Everyone in these groups are just stuck." She said, "There's a guy in this group, and he's been in this program for 33 years."
So she was going to the groups that you're suggesting,
Mm-hmm.
but it just wasn't working for her.
She said, "I don't know what grief looks like and what ending grief looks like." She goes, "But I just know that in 33 years, I can't look like this."
This
She says,
doesn't
"There has
feel
to be
right."
something
Okay.
better." So about 8 months later, I stumbled upon the grief recovery method, and I signed her up for the program without her permission. She and I both took the class. Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. I lied to her and told her that my church paid for it. So
Okay.
she agreed to go. We took the program, and the day that it was finished, I called her up, and I said, "I think this thing worked. I feel better." And I said it in a really low voice because I also thought, what if she's not feeling like
Yeah,
I'm
got
feeling?
it.
I don't want to
Got
feel,
it.
bad. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "Heck yeah, this worked."
Yeah.
And when she was screaming, it was right then the thought went through my heart, I have to help people. I have to help people so they can find a way out, not like what we had suffered through.
Yeah.
And she and I both became certified grief recovery specialists, and we've been helping people with broken hearts ever since and guiding them through the process.
Well, your sister must have had a tremendous amount of faith in general, but faith in you as well. After a trial and error of things that doesn't seem like it worked, and then you call her up and you say, "We're going to this thing." I can imagine with the feeling in her heart and the stuff she'd been through, she's just like, "No, Sharon, not one more.
Not
of these,
one more
right?
thing, right? Yeah, and that's how she was. But she said, she tells the
But
story.
I'll go anyway."
She goes, "Well, I didn't want to let the people in her church down, so
Okay.
I thought I would try something." And imagine that I was calling her every day on the phone. And this goes back to stages of grief. And I don't know if you've ever heard that, but that's really a theory that's out there. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the paper in
Right.
1969. We know for a fact as grief recovery specialists, there are no stages.
Right.
But every day I would call Erica up, and that was the only information we had,
you're like,
right?
"What stage are you in?
What stage
Where
are
are
you
you at?"
in? And
Yeah.
she's like, one day she's like, "I'm in denial." And I would say, "Denial? Well, you know that he died, right?" And she's like, "Yes." "Well, you know we had a funeral, right? You remember that?" "Yes." So denial didn't quite fit, but we
Got
would
it.
try to make it fit, right?
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, maybe I'm just in denial that it happened." Like we kept trying to make the stages fit, but they would never fit.
I think I've done some. I've read that book and I've worked in that arena with the stages. I think that in each one of those stages there are some truths in there, but I don't know that
Yes.
I would have called it a stage.
Yeah.
Because it almost feels like this is linear, and you're supposed to go through it from
Yes.
stage one to stage whatever,
Right.
and it doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
It-
So
it
what
doesn't work
stage are
that way.
you in?
Right.
How do you go from stage to stage? And how long do each one of the stages take? Like there were no answers to those questions. Here are
Right.
some things we do know. You will have disruptive sleep patterns.
Got it.
You will have a roller coaster of emotions. One minute you'll be up, the next minute you'll be down, right? You'll have a change in eating patterns. You may be eating, you may not be eating. And all of those things are okay. You may be less than happy. You may have a feeling of being depressed, 100%. You may want to sleep all the time. All of those things are true. They're absolutely true, especially with someone who has lost their child, you know?
Well, it's also a natural part of the process that your brain has to go through that in order to heal. You know,
Yes.
We talk to people in early stages of drug and alcohol recovery, as well as early stages of grief. There's a thing called anhedonia, right, where the chemicals in your brain just don't work the same. And so the way that we describe it is after a loss and somebody comes along and they say, "Hey, let's go to Disneyland and have some fun." You might say, "Okay, I'll go with you." But you're the person sitting there going, "Oh my God, this
Yeah.
is not like really like,
Yeah.
because I can't, my brain cannot experience that because of the chemicals that are going on
Right.
in depression and in grief and
Right.
in loss and all that stuff. So it's a normal part of the process.
Right, right. It's definitely a normal part of the process. Grief is also the feeling of reaching out for someone or something that has always been there, only to discover when I need it one more time, it's no longer there. So it was many times I went to Erica's house and Austin would leave with me because he loves my husband. He always wanted to be around my husband. Well, there were days afterwards where I went and he wasn't there. I could see it also in an addiction. I reach out for that bottle one more time, but I know I can't have it. It's no longer there. So definitely a grieving experience for sure.
Yeah, and it's almost like, so let's talk about some of the healing process. So I'm imagining you go to their house, and maybe you've done this, and then you go to leave, and in that moment you realize, like, I feels like I'm leaving without taking something with me, which is what's happening, right? What do I do to fill that void, or to make it like I don't have that feeling anymore?
There's nothing to fill that exact void other than, and you and I've talked to you about this, is having a plan when we go there and talking a lot. So something that I think we did as a family from the very beginning is we never stopped talking about Austin. We never stopped saying his name. We never stopped telling stories about it. That was helpful to us and to the surrounding people. So people that came to our house immediately after losing Austin, the fact that we as a family, and mostly Erica and Lewis, his parents, continue to talk about him. And even to this day, we will share stories about him. It helps the grievers and the people that are coming around.
Right.
The other thing is, Bob, that we need to remember, talking about Austin is just talking about Austin. That's not going to help us heal. We really need to walk the steps of completing that relationship. Austin was born on March 2nd. He died on June 17, 2006. He was taken from me way too early. He was taken from my journey with him way too early. And there were things that I needed to say to Austin to complete that relationship. I needed to tell him I loved him. Right. I needed to thank him for being here with me. I needed to tell him I was sorry for things that I hadn't done for him.
So I wish I would have said, and now, so don't wish you would have said, let's say it.
First of all, love is a product of truthful communication. Let's communicate truthfully always, but sometimes we don't get that chance, right? And so I, through grief recovery, was able to walk the journey with Austin and complete my relationship with him, even to the point of telling him goodbye and how much I loved him. And it was done in a specific way, and the steps were set up a specific way, that when I finished that next day, I felt complete with him. I felt the pain of his loss was absolutely removed from my heart. And just like my girlfriend Sharon yesterday, and also with Austin, I will miss them every day for the rest of my life. And I will literally have moments where I sit and think of them, and I will miss them. But the pain of that broken heart is no longer there.
Got it. So for our families that are going through this holiday season and they're experiencing, the loss, what are some things right now that we can do to help us through this process?
So I definitely think that we need to have a plan for our holiday. Don't just let the holiday come upon you. I keep saying that same thing, but let me just throw out some examples, right? Okay. So what about, the most important thing is I think that you need to let everyone know what you want to do. If you don't want to do the old traditions that we always did with our family members, then don't do those traditions. But it's also equally important that we let the family know what we don't want. Right? So on the year Austin died, the first year Austin died, Erica called each and every one of us up and said, look, I am not waking up on Christmas morning without you guys. It's going to be crappy for all of us, and so we might as well be together. Right. And so that night we all got together. We got family pajamas, and we had a pajama party, and we were together on Christmas Eve. We spent the night all at Erica and Lewis's house, and we woke up that morning together. That's a tradition that we keep as a family. Some other traditions you might change, just alter a little bit. Maybe you'll change the place that you normally put the tree. Maybe everyone will go out and get a special ornament in memory of our loved one that's no longer there. Maybe you'll set a place at the table for the loved one that is no longer there. Maybe at dinner on Christmas Day, we'll all talk about the loved one and his or her favorite part of Christmas. Maybe you'll go to a different family member's house. Maybe you could watch some family videos, and just enjoy them together. None of this is going to make the pain go away. But if I know I'm doing something, I have something to at least look forward to, then I can orchestrate a new tradition around that and it takes the edge off just a little bit.
What are some things that I might not want to do? Certainly, I think they might all surround the same issue. The same thing is I'm picturing taking that pain and just sticking it somewhere and not wanting to look at it.
Yeah.
Right?
We don't want to isolate. Do not isolate.
Right.
Do not decide not to celebrate the holiday.
Which I think is different than saying openly to your family, like, I need a little time alone.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what we're talking
No,
about.
no.
We're talking about shutting everything down and leaving
Yes.
the hell alone and closing the
Yeah.
curtains. Like, we don't want to do that.
Like in my
right?
story yesterday with Sharon, I went to church and I did the choir with her, but then I left and I told my husband, I need a little time alone. It was
Right.
just a little time.
That's
and
healthy.
I literally looked at some photos of her. I thought about her. I wrote a quick letter to her. And that was something that I did alone. I needed a little time. That's so
It's different than isolation.
It's so
Yeah,
different than
got it.
isolation. Isolation would look something like this. I'm not putting up any decorations.
Don't call me.
Don't call me. Don't
Yeah.
come to the
I'm
house.
not going to answer the phone.
I have the lights
Right.
off. I'm just going to sit here with my coffee and cry until January 3rd.
Yeah.
That's what that looks like. Don't do that.
So, and you may not even be aware that you're doing that. So maybe this conversation allows you to say, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm doing that."
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because I think this may look a lot different, but I think it's achieving the same thing. Is busying the heck out of
Yeah.
myself so I don't have to pay attention
Yes.
to what's going on either. Right?
Right. Yeah.
I may not even be aware that I'm doing that.
Exactly.
But that's another maybe no or something, right?
Keeping busy is one of the myths where people will advise you, just keep busy
Yeah.
and time will heal. Just keep busy. So that's the same thing. Think about the person that keeps so busy doing so many things, then they wake up on January 3rd. You just talked about this, and they're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, and the pain is still there.
Right. It's got to see you have to take a breath at some point.
Yeah.
Right. And checking out with substances is another thing we do not want to do.
We talk about that a lot in grief recovery. We call it STIRBing, short-term energy relieving behaviors. They're anything that we're going to do to help us move past the pain, right? So we may use alcohol, we may use drugs. Some people cut,
Right.
gambling, lying, sex, pornography. Isolation is a big
Food.
one. Eating is
Yep.
huge. That's excessive eating and then no eating at all, right?
Right.
So, and the list goes on and on. Social media, constantly being
Well,
on social
addictions,
media.
there are, and this may sound foreign to anybody who's listening who doesn't understand, but the great majority of people who drink or use drugs do not become drug addicts. But the formula that we're talking about
Yeah.
is where addiction is born.
Yeah.
When I've experienced a trauma or a loss or something that's really, really heavy or painful, and in the middle of that, I start to self-medicate with unhealthy behaviors,
Right.
drinking, drugs, cutting, food, whatever. Before I know it, I'm caught up in an addiction and I've crossed that line and may not be able to come back from that. So it's a really ripe and dangerous area for addiction to be born.
So I'll share my own personal story with you. Donovan died in 2015. That was Austin's brother in a motorcycle accident. And we had available to us some Xanax and Ativan to help us through. But I remember saying to my sister, who's a nurse practitioner, I was like, no, I'd rather have alcohol because I feel like I can manage it better.
Right.
And that alcohol, drinking the alcohol, not only stayed at the 2 weeks of Donovan's death and doing the funeral and all that, I came home and I continued the
Yeah.
drinking.
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, I was in trouble in that area. So yes, it absolutely can surround a major loss or a trauma in our life. And it can sneak up on you without even knowing that, right?
Well, and I mean, you think about it, you're somebody who understands that. You're working in grieving and you're telling people about STIRBs. Don't
Yeah.
do this, don't do this. And all of a sudden you're caught up in it and go, oh my gosh, what's happening
How did
here?
this happen? Right,
Yeah, I
yeah.
should know better.
I should know better. Yeah, exactly. I should know better. And so here I was 6 months later, looking at what am I going to do with this,
Right.
So, and it was something that I had to handle, personally and definitely handle head on, but yes.
Yeah, and the problem with using any of those unhealthy behaviors, or maybe one of the problems with using those unhealthy behaviors to medicate from grief, loss, trauma, abuse, neglect, on and on and on, is that once I've crossed that line into addiction where it becomes a coping mechanism for
Yes.
me, now as I go through my life, life, any stressor that comes up,
Yes.
all of a sudden that will be my go-to.
Yeah.
And so you can see how it just sort of steamrolls and gets worse
Right.
really, really quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's the big no-no for sure.
Now, also know that family members, close family members that are near, they can't fix this. They cannot make this pain go away. We have to go through the grief. We have to go through it. You can't fix it for them, and you can't take it away. A lot of times people will come up with, they're the ones that are trying to keep you busy. They're taking you to Disneyland and planning the Christmas events and keeping you so busy so that you can go through the holidays without any thoughts or pain.
Yeah.
Tears just are. They may or may not be a sign of grief. A broken heart just is. The tips that I'm giving you is not going to make the pain go away. Completing the relationship is what's going to help you with the pain.
Right.
But going through the holiday, you just have to go in there with a different plan than you normally would.
And allow yourself to feel.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people try to just hold it. I don't, I want to be strong or whatever. And you know what? If you're going to cry, cry.
You got to lean into it, and you got to go with it. Yes, if you're going to cry, cry, especially for your children. It's so important for them to see that, okay, tears go with this, and that's okay. Mommy's crying, daddy's crying, and it's okay. We have to kind of go with it. We kind of have to lean into it. It's painful, but if you push back against it and say, I'm definitely not doing that, I'm not going there, and you really push back, it's going to be a lot harder than if you kind of just lean into it just ever so slightly, just a little bit.
And we can do, if we're not careful, we can do physiological damage to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And real physical problems,
Oh,
high blood pressures, hypertensions, heart problems. you name
IBS,
it.
all of them.
Yeah, on and on and on. And that is a lot of times as a result of holding in emotions. We see that a lot in family members and loved ones of recovering people who aren't taking care of themselves. Is stuffing feelings, and all of a sudden they're having physical ailments that are coming up, all kinds of messy stuff. So that energy has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so we lean into it.
Yeah.
Right? We feel the feelings, we lean into it, we go with the process, and we complete those relationships.
Yes.
We'll be back right after this. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour, and we'll be back in a minute.
Mission Valley Bank puts the community in community banking. They strive to be your most trusted bank. Mission Valley Bank is happy to sponsor KHTS Holiday Music. Happy holidays!
KHTS Holiday Music also brought to you by Chiquita Canyon.
From all of us at Chiquita Canyon, we'd like to wish you and your family a happy, prosperous holiday season. This year, Chiquita Canyon is proud to sponsor holiday music on your local hometown station, KHTS. Happy holidays.
The Santa Clarita Artists Association has a new gallery in downtown Newhall on 6th Street between Main and Railroad, right across from the Canyon Theater Guild. The gallery features our members' paintings, sculptures, and one-of-a-kind handcrafted gift items. Whether you're an art lover, buyer, or an artist wishing to join, visit our website at santaclaritaartist.org, come to our free monthly meetings at Barnes & Noble, or stop by the gallery. For upcoming events and exhibits, check us out at santaclaritaartist.org. We make visual art visible.
Let me get this straight. You pay for heating and air conditioning, and then some of it escapes through drafty windows, poor ductwork, and lack of insulation? Doesn't seem like the best energy strategy for you or the planet. SoCalGas will give you up to $3,000 in incentives for basic energy upgrades and up to $6,500 for advanced upgrades like heating and cooling equipment. Visit SoCalGas.com/EnergyHero or call 1-888-871-0345 for participating contractors. Some restrictions may apply.
Your hometown station, KHTS.
We fall so hard, now we gotta get back up and
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sheritz, and we're in studio today with grief specialist Sharon Brubaker, and we have a couple of minutes left. In the world of grief and loss, the holidays are very difficult for a lot of people.
They're very difficult. Don't just sit around and be sad and be brokenhearted. I'm here. Reach out to me at 661-212-0720. I will have a conversation with anyone. I offer a free mini session for 30 minutes. We can do it in person. We can do it on Zoom. We can do it over the phone. If you just want to know how to get through the holidays and you just want to talk about that, call me up. If you just want to talk, call me up. I'm making myself available to anyone who may need help during this time.
And it's SharonBrubaker.com.
SharonBrubaker.com, and that's BRUBAKER.
SharonBrubaker.com, or call her up 212-0720. Something else that I want to put out there is if you are new in the recovery process from drugs and alcohol, and this is your first holiday season, however long that you've been using or drinking, you may not have been processing any past grief or past trauma or past stuff that has happened. And so if you're sitting here thinking, well, I haven't lost anybody since I was a kid, or maybe even it's not coming up, and all of a sudden you're finding yourself really melancholy or sad, or you're having trouble during this time and you feel like relapsing, be aware that in your first year of recovery from drugs and alcohol, that everything is new and you are going to experience the memories that you may not have thought about for all these years. So please be aware of that as well.
Absolutely. So important. It'll all come up.
It
at some point.
Yeah, it will. I had a couple of things. I had a professor who used to tell me. He said, if you don't deal with your core issues, they will deal with you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not. These types of things that we talk about that are real heavy. It's not something that you can just put to the side or put behind you and never look at. You don't try to do that, because we see so many people who try, and it has to come out somewhere.
Absolutely. And we are guides.
Right.
You need a guide. Walking through that process is dark and ominous, and having a guide to lead you, someone who's been there, it makes it just a little bit easier than trying to do it on your own.
Yeah, and oftentimes as people that are sort of opening the door and walking people in, our job is not to try to give you any answers. It's just to hold your hand.
Just hold your hand.
Just, walk you through the door, right?
Yeah, I've been through this path. Let's do it again.
Yeah. And that's neat. When I started my recovery journey, the thing that really struck me was the other people in recovery ahead of me.
Yeah.
And they were laughing, and there was nothing funny going on. The first day that I walked in, there was like, my life is burned to the ground. This ain't funny, right? And I walk in and people are laughing and joking and hugging each other, and I got this thing called hope.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't felt in a very long time. And so find some hope.
Yeah, there is hope.
Yep.
You can heal, and you will recover.
Absolutely. Sharon, real honor and a pleasure to have you on the show today. Listeners, if you need to reach out to us, Sharon's phone number is
212-0720.
And my number is 296-4444. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you. What an honor.
All right, guys, we'll see you in the new year.